Hello guys, it's Vincent here again. First of all, I just want to apologize for the long silence on my part. It's been hectic, coupled with everything going on around the world now. I just hope everyone is staying safe, and we're just going to jump into it. So the last topics we treated were lists and arrays. Today, though, instead of continuing to do dictionaries and strings, we're going to skip ahead to while loop and for loops because I believe these are more important and we should treat them first. So, for loop and while loop. Now, to begin, first of all, what is a loop exactly? Most constructs and programming usually have their roots in the real world. So if you see an unfamiliar concept, first ask yourself, what does this mean in the real world, right? Outside programming. Now, what is a loop in the real world? A loop is basically a structure that wraps itself. So probably if a snake eats itself, it becomes a loop because now it's this continuous circle. And I just googled loop and I switched to images, and you can see different examples of loop. This is a loop. So basically whatever is following the path of this loop will continue to remain in this path. Whatever follows this path will continue following this loop. And basically that's what a loop is. A loop is a path that is not self-terminating, so it doesn't end, it just keeps going. If you put a ball in a loop and you hit that ball, it's going to continue moving in that loop. Now, what exactly so what's the relevance of loops in programming, right? Why do we need loops in programming? The truth is there are a lot of things we do in programming today that will require loops for. For example, let's take WhatsApp for example. Most of us are on WhatsApp. And now how does WhatsApp know you have a new message? Now I am not saying this is how the WhatsApp guys designed it, but one way would be for your WhatsApp to have a loop that never terminates. And the code in that loop, all it does is check if there is a new message. So check if there's a loop that never ends, and somewhere in that loop is a code construct saying check if there's a new message from the server. So that loops continue to run and run, and immediately that loop stops. Even if you have a new message, there's no way for your phone to know there's a new message because you're no longer checking the server for the new message. So that's an example of what we can do with loop. We can use a loop to do a lot of things. For example, we can pull out people's names from a database and send each of them messages in a loop. So we just write a loop that pulls each of those names and sends them a message, maybe a stay safe from corona message. That's an example of a loop. So if you want to do one thing a lot of times, you put it in a loop. Now, let's look at some code. Going to open my command prompt here. So in case this looks a little different, this is PowerShell. So I use PowerShell. You can, if you're on Linux or Mac, you can use the terminal you're used to. Or I'm using PowerShell for this lecture. Now I'm just going to create a new project and I'll call it loops. So as usual, .NET new console-n, and the name of our project is going to be loops. Enter. And so project created. Okay. You know what? I created this project in the wrong place. I'm just going to delete the folder. Yes, I want to delete all, and then I usually create all my projects in one folder, so I'm going to navigate there, source/repos, and then I'll say .NET. So I like to create all my projects in the same folder, so I'll say .NET new console-n loops. And there, we're creating the project again. It's taking a while. Okay, so project created. If I go ls now, you see all of my projects, and right here you see loops. So let's say cd loops, and let's see, and then as usual we'll open it in Visual Studio Code. I say in code dot okay, I am going to have to increase my font a bit because I like working with small fonts. Or in this case, I guess I have to make it bigger. So file, preferences, settings, font. Okay, I already changed my font to 30 here. I think 30 is a bit too much. Let's do 28. Let's see how that looks. Okay, this is too large. Let's do 22. Let's see how it looks. Still too much. Let's do 20. Let's see what 18 looks like. Okay, so it's a March. Let's see 15. Okay, 15 looks good. I hope everyone can see this. Well, 15 looks good. Okay, so loops. So what are we building? We want to write a simple program that prints the same thing multiple times. So like I said, the idea of loops is to be able to do one thing multiple times, right? And there are two major types of loops. There's a for loop and there's a while loop. And I'm going to explain the for loop and then tell you how it differs from the while loop and how to use and how and when to use both of them. So let's say I have a name, right? I have a string variable string name equals Vincent Warner, and for whatever reason I want to print my name 10 times on the screen, say 10 times. I mean, I don't know why I would want my name printed 10 times, but for the sake of this example, let's say we just want our name printed 10 times on the screen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a for loop, and the way to build a for loop is like this. I type for okay, sorry, I used the code snippets there. I'm simply going to do everything manually. So Visual Studio Code allows you to be able to do some things automatically, but to create a for loop, you say for, open a bracket, and then you declare an integer. I'll explain why you have to do this later. So you just say int I equals 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus. I'm going to come down here, put my curly braces, and I'll now say console, that's the right line, and then I'll put name. And before I explain what this does, I'm going to run it so you see it for yourself. I'm going to switch to terminal here, and I'm just going to say .NET run. And now you can see it's printed my name how many times? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we say printed my name 10 times, right? So that is the function of this structure here. This is a loop. And what it does is I'm telling it, hey, print this name, and I'm telling it to print it 10 times. Now let us understand what is going on here. The for loop needs a condition. So if I don't put a condition here, this loop will run forever. So what I did in this loop is I created a variable, an integer variable called I, and I said let I be 0 So create a variable named I and set its value to 0. So I is 0. And then I'm saying run this loop. Each time you run this loop, come back and check the value of I. If I is less than 10, run this loop again. So I am saying before you run this loop, check that I is less than 10. If I is less than 10, execute what is in this loop. And now as we have it here, because we set I to 0, I is less than 10. So yes, we will run the code. And then we came here, what this is doing is we're saying after running this code, add 1 to I. Now in programming, I plus plus is the same. So I plus plus is the same as saying I equals I plus 1. So it's essentially saying take whatever was in I before, add 1 to it, and save it back into I. So if I was 0, when I say I plus plus, I will become 1. And the next time I say I plus plus, I becomes 2. And the next time I say I plus plus, I becomes 3. So it's basically just increment I by 1. So let us look at this again. I have a loop structure here. I create a variable, which is going to be my loop variable. We call it a loop variable sometimes. And we say create a variable, start it at I. Now before you run this loop, check is I less than 10, and yes, I is less than 10 in this case. And then we print out console.writeLine name, and that is when this happens, right? The first one. And then we say after executing this line of code, add 1 to I. Now I becomes 1. I is no longer 0, I is now 1. And then we come back here and we say, hey, is I less than 10? And because I is less than 10, we're going to display this again. Now what happens for the last one is that I is 9 at this point, which means 9 is less than 10. And then we print out this last one. And then we increment I. Immediately we increment I becomes 10, right? Now our check comes here and say, hey, is I less than 10? Remember that at this point, the value in I is 10. So what we're asking here is 10 less than 10? And no, 10 is not less than 10. So our check fails and our loop exits. So this is our loop condition. You have to have a very well-defined loop condition. If not, your loop will run forever. And that becomes what we call an infinite loop. A what? An infinite loop. So I hope that is understood. If you don't understand it at first, I encourage you to replay the video or just rewind it and try to take it slow. So what we're doing here is we're printing this same thing multiple times, and that really is all a for loop is. I mean, you can do wonderful things in a for loop, or really this is what a for loop does. Now let us write a simple program with based on what we've learned here. Let's say we're a class teacher, right? And as students walk into our class, we want to record their names, right? And then we're taking attendance, right? We're going to write a simple program that takes the name of every student that walks into our class for that particular lecture, right? And to start, how do I save these names? I'm going to save these names in a list of strings, right? So I'll say list of string attendees equals new list of string. So so we discussed lists in a previous video, so I would expect that you know how to use lists. Now if you get these red lines, it's because we don't have the using statement, so you just add using system.collections.generic. C# also offers you some help, so if you don't want to have to type this out, you can simply come here and hit control and period, control and full stop, or control and period, and you click the first one and it actually for you. Now remember that we need to collect student names basically, right? Let's assume we know the number of people coming for our class and we're expecting 5 people. So I'm going to write a loop here. I'm going to say for int I equals 0, as I said, I is less than 5, I plus plus. So I'm saying, hey, I'm going to take 5 times, this loop is going to run 5 times and exit. So each time the loop runs, I'm going to say console write line, enter student's name. You know, let's change this to a console.write instead of a console.write line. So console.write enter student name, and then we need to take the inputs that the person is going to give us, right? So we're going to say string input equals console the read line, right? And all we're doing is now we have to add this input to our list of attendees up here, and then we can just say attendees to add input. So what do we have here? We started from creating a list of attendees for our class, which is going to be empty initially, and then we created a loop to run 5 times because we're expecting 5 people for this class. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say enter student's name, and then so we're going to prompt the user to enter a student's name, and then next we're going to read whatever the person types into the string called input, and then we're going to add the input to our list of attendees, and then we're going to just come down here and say all console write line attendees registered successfully. Is that a correct spelling for successfully? So we have this. Let's try this out and see. So I'm just going to say .NET run. And I get my message for the first one. Enter student's name. I'm going to say Vincent Warner. I can't even spell my name. I'm going to say Richard Warner. I'm going to say Shehi Ade DG. I'm going to say me Omochunibo. And let's see, which other name do I know? I'm going to say Patrick Musk. And so, and then it says attendees registered successfully, and then my loop exits. So I entered how many names? 5 names, and according to my loop, I told my loop to run this 5 times. So this helps me take people's name multiple times. So I don't have to write 5 console.write lines for me to be able to do this. On the normal, if I wasn't using loop, I'll have to like copy this code and have it all over the place to collect each of the names, right? So this is one of the benefits of loops. So this is what a loop has helped me do here. Now, I would like to print out all the names after registering them. So after saying attendees registered successfully, I'm going to print a blank line. So write line registered successfully. Names are shown below. So I want to display the names. And then to display all of the names in my attendees list, I'm going to use a loop again. I'm just going to say for and I equals 0, I is less than or equal 5, I plus plus. And now this is another thing we can use a loop for here. We can use the loop to print out the contents of things like lists. So we can go to a list and print out each of its contents one by one, right? So here I'm just going to say console.writeLine, and then I'm going to say attendees with a square bracket and I. Now let me explain what is going on here. Attendees is a list, and the way we get things out of lists is to index them. So we can say attendees 1 will give us the item in the first position of the list, and we can say attendees 2 to give us the second item. Now notice that each time this loop runs, the value of I changes. So the first time this loop runs, I is going to be 0, so it's going to print the item in the first position of attendees. The second time it runs, I is going to be 1, so it's going to print the item in the second index. The next time it runs, so that is why I am using I here instead of using a fixed number, so that each time it runs, an item in that position is printed. Now, instead of running this loop 5 times, let's pretend I don't know how many items are in this list, but I want to display every single one of them. So I'm going to say I is less than attendees dot count. And I need another using statement for that, using system.link. And then I can come and say, okay, I don't know how many items are in this list, but I want you to check that I is less than that number of items. So if there are 10 items in that list, this code is going to run until all of them are printed. We're just going to run this again and see. .NET run. So it's asking for a certain name again. I'll say Vincent Warner. I'll say Richard Warner. I'll say Jet Awful. I'll say Bumi Motunjibo. And then I'll say Elon Musk. And that's 5, right? And I hit enter. Okay, I noticed we didn't print out our attendee that's supposed, but then I forgot to save the file. So I'm going to go to File, Save, and I'll have to clear and run this again. So I'll say .NET run. So it works this time. So Vincent, Richard, Bridget, Bumi, and Elon. Enter, and it tells me, hey, attendees registered successfully, names are shown below. So I have all of these names. Now for this scenario, all I'm doing is displaying these names back to myself. But in a real world scenario, I might take these names and write them to a database, or I might send them to a course registration system that will say, okay, these students attended this class, give them this credit. And this really is all there is to loops, right? You can do super complicated things with loops, but right here I have shown you how to do one thing a number of times and how to use loops to display the contents of a list or an array. You can do the same thing with an array here. Now, one fundamental problem with our program here is that we're running it just 5 times. So we're assuming that only 5 people are coming for our lecture. Now, this is because by definition, we need to tell our loop how many times it is going to run. So for a for loop, you need to tell a for loop, look, you're going to run 4 times, or you're going to run 10 times, or you're going to run 7 times, or you're going to run 6 times. So when you create a for loop, the number of times that for loop will be executed is defined. Basically, you're defining the number of times you would run that for loop. And that is where a for loop differs from a while loop. A while loop does not have a fixed number of time that it must run for or that it can run for. In fact, a while loop will run until a condition is met, and that is where the name while comes from. So it is saying, while this condition you have given me is true, I will continue to run. While X condition is true, I will continue to run. Now, let us change our program to handle an unlimited number of students until we tell our program, okay, that's the last student, or okay, that's okay, we're not taking any more students. So I'm going to take out the code here, and we're simply going to proceed to start our loop. Now, the way to make a while loop is to say while, open up close bracket here, and I'll just start simple. I'll say while true. I'm going to say console right line, we are in an infinite loop. Now get ready to see some magic, because this is magic. So I'm going to come up here, I'm going to clear what we have here, and I'm going to say, I won't use console.write line just to make it more pretty. I'll say console.write, we're in an infinite loop, and I'll say .NET run. Let's see what's going to happen here. Now, if you notice what's going on, we're simply printing the same thing over and over and over again, and this is all our program is ever going to do. And this is what a while loop is. We haven't told our loop what condition to terminate in. All we're saying is while true, and this is what you know as an infinite loop. This code will continue to run until our system resources is maxed out or something before it will stop. So this is an infinite loop, an infinite while loop. If you want to stop it, just hit Ctrl C on your system and it's going to stop. So let's use a while loop, because we now know that a while loop can run an unlimited number of times. Let us use a while loop to take our records, take our attendees, right? So what I'm going to do here, just follow me closely, I'll explain everything when I'm done. So I'm going to start with string input equals, I'm going to start input of an empty string, and then here I'm going to say while input is not equal to end. And sorry if my not equal looks different, it's because of the font I am using. So normally what you would see when you type not equal is this operator and this operator. So this is a not equal operator with no space between them. So you have the exclamation mark and you have the equality sign. Well, on my editor, because of the way I configured my editor, when I put them together, it changes into the literal mathematical not equal. Right, but what you're going to see in your own editor is the exclamation and the equal to without this space between them. If I remove the space, it's going to change for me. So I just wanted you to take note of that. So I'm saying while input is not equal to end, run this code. Now remember I told you while statements work with conditions. I'm saying as long as the value inside of input is not end, execute this code. And now, since the value in input is just an empty string, this code is going to be executed. So I'm going to say console write, enter student's name, and then I'm going to have console the read line, and then I'm going to save whatever is coming in inside of input. So I have input equals console.readline, and then I'm going to have attendees.add input, just as we did before. And then I'm going to console.writeline attendees added successfully. Names shown below. And then I'm going to use a for loop as before. So int I equals 0, I is less than 10. No, so we're using I is less than count because currently we don't know how many items are in that list because it's a while loop. So someone can put 10 items, someone can put 200, we don't know. So we're going to use this, and then I'll say I plus plus, right? And then down here, I just want to print out the names. So I'll say console right line attendees and I, just as we did before. I'm going to save all of this, and let's just look at what we have done here once again. So once again, we created a list of attendees, a list of strings which is going to hold the name of our attendees, and then we created a variable called input. So our input is going to be the defining factor for our loop. And then we came down and we created a while loop, and we said, hey, if the value is input is not end, run this loop. So we're saying as long as the thing inside of input is not end in capital letters, continue to run this loop. And then when you're done, tell us that the people, when the loop exists, tell us that people have been taken, and then we print them back out. I hope this works. So I'm going to clear this. Then I'll come here and I'll just say .NET run. Let's hope this works. Okay, so enter student name. We see that it's asking for the student name because input is not end. So I'm going to say we're going to say Vincent. So first name Vincent, owner. Second name Sophie. Third name, let's say Barbara. Fourth name Elon. Fifth name Richard. We have Sharon. We have me. We have Bridget. And if you notice what's going on here, I've added how many names now? 6, 7. I can just keep going. I can just literally leave a laptop by the door and tell my students, hey, when you come in, just type your name, right? And then this goes on. Kelvin comes to the class and he types Kelvin, and Rachel comes to the class and she types Rachel, Rachel, and who else? Let's say Hassan comes in and he types Hassan. Amina comes in and she types Amina, and that is what a while loop is, right? And our loop just keeps going. We haven't told our loop. So if 200 people come to our class, 200 people are going to type in their names, and then at the end of the day, when the teacher is ready to leave the class, he's simply going to type END. And remember what we're saying is, we're saying run this loop until the input becomes end. So if we take input here, right, let's see what's going to happen now. So I type end and I hit enter, and immediately our code is done executing. So it says attendees added successfully, and it prints out all of them. Now the reason this happens is because the while loop checked is input equals to end, and immediately we typed end here, that became true. And then so it says okay, input is actually end, so this is no longer valid, and then it jumps to the next line of code to execute. So a while loop is going to keep executing as long as its condition remains true. and then it comes here and it executes this loop to print out everything, and that is it. And really, that is loops can become a little more complicated than this, but this is a basic idea behind loops, right? This really is about everything there is to know. Not about everything, but these are the basics that a beginner needs to know to start using loops. And then as you start to require other things, you basically go out and learn about it. Now, I don't know how many of you noticed, but there's a bug in our program. When we displayed the numbers of the attendees of our lecture, we saw that we have end as one of our attendees, but end is not an end was the instruction that made our loop to exit. So it shouldn't be one of our students. How do we fix this? Now, when a loop is executing, you want the loop to quit. So you don't want that. You don't want the condition to be met anymore. You don't care if that condition has been met. You don't care if the loop has run the number of times it wants to run. You just want it to stop immediately. So an example might be, let's use the WhatsApp example again. So I have a bit of code that I am looping. So I'm always checking the server. Hey, does this person have any new message? Hey, does this person have any new message? Hey, does this person have any new message? And then suddenly my phone sends a notification that, oh, the battery is down. And the WhatsApp programmers, they know that, okay, if your battery is down, we should stop checking so frequently for new messages. So they're going to have a statement in there that says, if battery is down, do this thing. Or if battery is down, stop executing this loop. So how do we stop executing our loop based on certain condition? We have a perfect example here. Now, when we type end, we expect our code to stop executing because we typed end, but we don't want to add it to the attendees list. So what do? I'm going to come down here and say and add a conditional statement. I'll say if input equals end break. Now, what I'm doing here is I am saying if input is equals end, that means if what the person types is end, just break this loop, go to the next statement in the line, exit this loop entirely, and then this input will not be added to our attendees list. So break is used to exit a loop. If you're in a loop and you hit a break statement, it doesn't matter what is following that break statement or what is before that break statement, you're simply going to jump out of the loop and move to the next line of code to execute. Now, don't take my word for it. Let's see it work. So I have added the break statement here, and I'm just going to run this again. .NET run. This time I'll use the two names to make it fast. So I have Vincent, I have Richard, I have Barbara, I have Linda, I have Ola, and I have end. And now, if you noticed, when my list of attendees were printed back, I have Ola, I have Linda, but I no longer have end as one of my what's it called? I no longer have end as one of my attendees because immediately I hit end, immediately I entered end, I checked if input is end, which became true immediately I entered end. It came in here and it broke. So it hit this break statement and exited the loop. Now it hit this break statement before it had the chance to add that end into our attendees list. And that is what an end does. That is what a break does. It takes you out of the loop entirely. Now there's another structure called continue, and what continue does is it takes you out of the loop and it takes you back to the beginning of the loop. So everything out after the continue statement is not executed, right? And I'll just leave the continue keyword as an example. I'll just leave the continue as an exercise for you guys. So go find out what the continue statement does. And really, this is all there is to loops. I I'll probably make a part 2 video to clarify. But if you have questions, if there's anything you would like me to clarify, please send it my way. But really, this is all you need to work with loops, at least for now. Thank you.